More desperate now, they asked their neighbors for help. And when the aid of neighbors failed, they even wrote to relatives in distant cities. They followed everyone's advice in turn. The best of it had no effect, and the worst made their son resist and distrust them evermore. They began to despair. Just then, word came of the greatest Hasidic Rebbe of their generation, Aaron of Karlin. The word came that he was going to visit their little shtetl. We did all that, by the way. We talked to all of our friends. We talked to everybody we could think of. Unfortunately, we called Norman. Norman was not on the way to our house at that point. So. But in this story, okay, Aaron Carpenter going to visit was a very helpful call. On the day that Aaron of Karlin came to their village, a long line of people waited for his blessing. The childless, the crippled, those who had failed in business. In short, nearly everyone in that shtetl stood in line. With their life's greatest problem foremost in their minds. And there among them was our couple and their 10-year-old boy. When at last they rushed into the great Rebbe's presence, they told him the whole story. The Rebbe, seated behind a desk, looked first at the little boy. The boy stood defiantly, his gaze down, his arms folded. The Rebbe's eyes turned to the parents. They looked nervously from their son to the Rebbe to each other, and then the Rebbe spoke. "So, he won't study Torah, will he?" He growled so loudly that the parents unconsciously took a step toward each other. "You leave him here with me for 2 hours. I'll give him a talking to that he'll never forget." Parents looked at each other in fear. Should they leave their little boy with such a fierce man? But the advice of everyone else had already failed. He was their last chance. As soon as the parents had left, the great Rebbe went up to the little boy. Slowly, tenderly, he put his arms around the boy. The boy was stiff at first, but then, by degrees, he allowed himself to be hugged. He dropped his arms to his side, relaxed the pout of his mouth, and was finally pulled against the breast of the great man. He stood there, hearing the Rebbe's heartbeat. Their breath flowed in and out together. When the parents returned after 2 hours, they said, "Did it work?" "Did it work?" he was nearly shouting. "You just wait and see." All the way home, the parents were looking at their little boy. Was there any change? Could there be any change? They stopped at the butcher's. The butcher slapped a piece of meat on the counter. "Mama, the butcher is angry, isn't he?" "Oh, I guess he is." "Mama, what happened to him to make him feel that way?" Over the days that followed, the parents realized their little boy was somehow more in touch with people, attuned to their feelings, interested in their stories. When he heard others discussing the Torah that week, he suddenly realized these were stories of people. He became fascinated with them. What made the people act that way? I think that's a good question to ask when we study Torah. What made them act that way? By everybody in there. Within a month, he asked to be allowed to learn to read the stories for himself. Within a year, his teachers saw him as their most talented student. In one way after another, the fire of Talmudic tradition began to glow brightly inside him. One day, 2 neighbors were arguing over the purchase of a calf. The boy went up to them. "Wait, there's a way for both of you to get what you really want." To the amazement of the neighbors, the boy showed them both how to be satisfied with the transaction. Before long, adult villagers were bringing their quarrels to the boy. He would point out to them the solutions that had been there in their hearts, but that they, over the roar of their fear and anger, could not hear. When it was time for the boy to choose a profession, what else could he do? He became a Rebbe himself. Years later, when he was known as the greatest Rebbe of his generation, his disciples would sit around him and ask, "You're such a great scholar. How did you get your deep insight into the Torah?" And he would say to them, "When did I learn to study Torah? When did I truly learn to study the Holy Torah? I learned everything when the great Rebbe, Aaron of Karlin, held me silently against his breast." So the lessons are pretty clear from that story. This story the person who told it cited another version in Buber's Tale of the Hasidim as one paragraph. So this is an expanded version of the story. But clearly, love was the turning point. That this Rebbe loved him. I liked, again, I don't know about the original story, but I liked that he emphasized that they just stood there and breathed in and out, breathed in and out. So it was a very nice touch of this story. And then the key point is he found his way into the Torah by looking at people and saying, why do they do that? And partly, I think maybe he was able to ask that question. Some of these things Joanne actually said to me when I told her the story. She said, oh, isn't that interesting? So, he got, some of the turning point was, once he experienced that love, then people who weren't loving, it's like, well, how come they're not loving? Now they had an experience of what loving is like. Whenever he saw something that wasn't loving, he's like, oh, what's going on here? And so he started asking about people. Then he got interested in the Torah, because the Torah teaches the same thing. And then he went back to thinking about people, so working with people. So again, I think, and Joanna was making this point yesterday too, if we look at the Torah through our own lives' perspective, then we do actually gain. We try to see our lives into the story of the Torah, our struggles, their struggles. It is our way in. So in the homework that I sent out for this month, I did emphasize that it's important to look at texts, and that we can look at texts and we can use study as part of the process of acquiring wisdom. And also then to really look at our own lives, and that's the practice we're really doing primarily when we sit here by ourselves, and hopefully when you're talking with each other, because we're looking at our own lives and seeing how this wisdom is playing out in our own lives. So here's an interesting segue into the last part of the talk. So these are some quotes from another text that I studied. It's called Zen Judaism. And some of these teachings apply again to what we've been practicing. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. Forget this and enlightenment will be the least of your worries. Be here now, be someplace else later. Is that so complicated? Now remember Joanna, the first line that Joanna read last night about from Rabbi Wein. Jews are not patient people, so here's another teaching in this wisdom text. Be patient and achieve all things. Be impatient and achieve all things faster. Zen is not easy. It takes effort to attain nothingness. And then what do you have? Bupkis. I just like saying bupkis. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single way. It's the effortful effort. Be aware of your body. Be aware of your perceptions. Keep in mind that not every physical sensation is a symptom of a terminal illness. Okay, now here's the key line. To practice Zen and the art of Jewish motorcycle maintenance, do the following. Get rid of the motorcycle. What were you thinking? So it seemed like from that having a motorcycle and wisdom do not go hand in hand. I didn't make this connect, and I was thinking about giving this. I've been working on this motorcycle talk, and it's going to be a small part of the talk now, actually. But I actually didn't make the connection that I'm going to start with last night when Joanna was giving her talk. But remember, sort of in response to the struggles we had in the spring and summer, early fall, that Joanna, which was the impetus for Joanna learning patience in terms of dealing with our son. So I decided during that period to get a motorcycle.